Well, welcome everybody. I'm excited to see you all here. I'm Katie Klein. I direct the Greater Kansas City Writing Project, and we're housed at the University of Central Missouri. So tonight's Ghost Story program, it emerges from one of our most exciting and rewarding programs, which is the Kansas City Storytellers. KC Storytellers brings together students from diverse high schools all over Kansas City to help build a better, less racist community by sharing our stories with each other. For me, I'm excited about tonight because there is no better story to hear around a campfire than a good ghost story, and I know we have several to share with you tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamie and Mary Beth, who've helped lead our KC Storytellers program for the past several years.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Jamie Mayo, and I am the librarian who is working as part of this, but also a storyteller. And so I work for the Kansas City Public Library and then tell stories whenever I get the chance and help other people tell their stories. And I've been a part of the KC Storytellers for the last 4 years.
Hi, my name is Mary Beth Rich, and I'm a high school English teacher at Lee Summit West High School. I'm also a member of the Greater Kansas City Writing Project, and I have been helping with the KC Storytellers also for the last 4 years. And we are excited for you to be able to hear our storytellers tonight. And so our very first storyteller of the evening is Tarjeen.
Hello. My name is Tarjeen Milsap. I am a junior. I'm 16 and I go to the Kaufman School. And I've been in KC Storytellers for a while now, and I'm really excited to do this. My story does not have a title. It's just a spooky story, I guess. Draven had hoped with her he would find something. With them gone, she was all he had to go off of. He had given up hope of anyone returning, so he let himself wander, the part of himself that knew where she was. It was unlike what he was supposed to be. He wasn't supposed to wander. Everlasting hope or everlasting hatred, those were his choices. By wandering, he had initially thought he'd gone from hope to hatred, but knowing her, he now had a bit of both, and also knew he had neither. She loved scary stories, and he loved to tell her his, never hinting that she was, in a way, a part of it. That would be a bit too scary for this girl, his friend, Lorna. Her name made him angry at first because it vaguely reminded him of his mother, Loretta. Even as the anger faded, the similarity of the name still haunted him. And the anger did fade as he got to know her better. He watched from afar at first, but soon discovered that she could see him, past the anger and lost hope, past the seeming invisibility in a world that never seemed to want him. So they grew to be friends, and the anger faded. Mostly. They would pass by the hospital sometimes while downtown, and he would tell her the story again. The story of the evil doctor who stole a little boy. And she would listen attentively every time, and he would almost forget how real it had been. But sometimes he would remember, and he would feel the lashes and the spittle on his face as the man screamed at him. And he would look at her, and her pale skin, and all he would be able to think, no, he wouldn't think. All he would be able to feel was hatred. But then the moment would pass, and they would walk and talk about other things. Until one night, he told the story again. The one about the white doctor that infiltrated the Wheatley Provident Hospital, the first Black-owned and operated hospital in Kansas City. The one about the white doctor who was a KKK member and used his position to hurt Black women and children. The one about the white doctor who went too far and ripped a twin boy from his mother's womb. The one about the evil man who kept that baby boy as a slave for the rest of both of their lives. The one about the white doctor who tried to burn down the hospital once people found out his practices were less than humane. The one about the evil doctor who was found dead in the Mississippi River. The one about the malnourished boy, beaten black and blue and found dead in the evil doctor's house a month later. And the one about the little boy's soul that waited for countless years at the hospital for his mother and brother, not knowing that their souls had moved on without him, that he was alone in the world. But this time when Draven came to the usual end of the story, he looked at her pale face and the cold, hard blue of her eyes. She had those eyes, the same that had looked before with such disgust and hatred. The eyes peered into his soul and opened the doors for something restless within him. He added a new ending to the story that now ended with the boy's soul moving on to haunt the descendant of the evil doctor. She laughed. She accused him of lying. She looked disappointed. He felt it boiling up through the shadow of his veins, through the hint of a full body. The anger, the indignance, the hatred. So he took her to the hospital. The second his soul got a scent of the place, it all came rushing back. The connection was unreal. Every crawl of every roach was like an itch on a back he could not physically touch, let alone scratch. Every spin of a spider's web was a knot in his throat, but he pushed her past the worst parts of himself and up to his heart. The room where he had sunken in the bed, moaning and wailing for a life that could have been, cursing and raging at the evil that stripped him of his future. He'd forgotten she was there until she asked him where they were. Her voice had changed, but so had he. She stepped ahead of him, perhaps hoping to keep herself from truly seeing him. He whispered to her, but it echoed through his body, through the hospital, through the room, through his shell. He told her this was where it happened. She asked about the baby, and he could hear the chills roll down her spine, unlike the one she usually got. He said his name, the doctor's name, her grandfather's name. He could tell she'd begun crying, even while standing behind her. The anger was gone. It had cooled completely. The restless burning heat was gone, and he looked at her in front of him, frozen with fear and the awful realization. And when Draven looked at her, he didn't see him anymore. She asked once more about the baby. He slipped the shadow of his hand into hers, though she would surely recognize by now that it wasn't real. And maybe she would finally believe his story. He doubted he would stay with her much longer now, but he had this moment with his friend, with Lorna. But before the final moment could commence, he had to tell her, plainly, for his sake. So when she asked about the baby, he simply replied, "Me." Thank you.
Thank you so much for that story. Great job. Our next performer tonight is Maya.
Okay. Hi, I'm Maya Wood, and I go to Olathe West. I'm a senior there, and I've been involved in Casey Storytellers for just last year. Okay. Mine doesn't have a title, so. The night you leave, there is nothing in the yard. No trees, no shrubs, absolutely no flowers. Just patchy grass and a bike that has seen better days than these. The sky is heavy and dark, and there is a stillness to the air. It feels like the world is waiting. You jog down the steps, your hands clenched. You might hear yelling behind you, a jagged version of your name, but you aren't sure. You keep walking, and not once do you turn around and look back. It's months later when you drive by, and you almost crash your bike when you catch sight of it. There's a tree, full grown, in the yard. It's tall and its trunk is thicker than your waist. It has all its leaves despite the season. You stop, your feet skidding along the pavement. There's an ache in you. Your feet feel like they're sinking. Your eyes seem to blister. You drop the bike and run. Out of curiosity, you come back. You have a hoodie on because of the cold and your lips are trembling. You intend to walk to the door, maybe knock, maybe sit on the stoop and cry, but when you catch sight of the house, you freeze. There are 4 trees in the yard. They twist and turn towards the house. The yard is scattered with leaves, having fallen into lush grasses. You swallow. And then you catch sight of something caught in one of the trees. Your bike, bright blue, is lodged in the branches of one. Hey, you turn. There they are, tall, beautiful as ever. You take a step towards them, but then there is something there. Something green is sneaking through one of their eyes. It's like a parasite. They are walking closer. Your lips are no longer trembling. Your cheeks heat. The hoodie feels unbearable. I missed you, they say, but you run. They have never told you that they missed you, only that they miss you. Something is happening. A week later, you pull up, this time with a friend. Their car is small, sensible. When they pull into the gravelly driveway, you leap out, and your heart is beating so hard it hurts. There's a forest. Full, thick trees cover the entire yard, long grasses as long as your knees between them. And, you notice with horror, there are more bikes in the trees. Is that a skateboard? Your friend asks, and you start. You hadn't noticed them get out of the car. You peer up at where they're pointing, and there it is, a skateboard. and you find you recognize it. It's the black skateboard of a friend of yours. Oh, you say. There is a whisper behind you. You turn, and your friend is gone. There is no car either. You stare at the spot where they were, your heart pounding. Then you walk through the grasses to the front door. A man passes by. He is in his red truck, his music up loud and his hand tapping the wheel in rhythm. Then he looks to the right and he swerves. He curses, the words shaking in his mouth. He takes his old phone and dials a number. Yeah, he says, there's a car and a person in a tree. Please come quick, there's blood in. The phone cuts out. His truck begins to rise. There is a whisper. You are in the house. There is no furniture anymore, only mounds of vines and grasses, tree roots sprawling across every inch of the floor. You are so frightened. You think you hear music for just a moment, but then it cuts off. There is no sound in the house, all but a sweet hum. Branches seep through the walls like liquid and you gag at the sight. Something is happening. There are 2 policemen outside. They have guns in their hands, frowns on their faces. They speak to each other. One holds up a radio and he says, 2 bodies in the trees. 2? The radio crackles. Yeah, the policeman says. 2 cars, too. And bikes, the other policeman says. And bikes. There's a whisper. The radio cuts off and all that is left is a hum. Hello? The radio voices. There's a silence, thick and sweet. And then 4 bodies. And then nothing. You see steps. They are made of branches, green liquid shining from within the cracks of the wood. It looks like what you saw in their eyes. Smooth and parasitic, green like apples with worms, green like spring come too early, too quiet. You walk up the steps. It gets warmer and warmer with each step upwards, and you shed your jacket. And then your shirt, leaving your undershirt. Sweat rolls down your temples. You can feel your hair matting from the heat. Hello, you say? There is a moment of nothing, and then a hum. The police report doesn't say much, as most of them don't. 7 bodies were found, 2 police officers, a man, a friend, and 2 lost lovers. The last body is identified. It's humanoid, but the blood is green and sticky. The house does not die. There is yellow tape surrounding it now. It has stopped humming since then, but most of the houses on the block have been abandoned. But one day, there is a teenager. They climb the fence, cut the tape, and turn on the flashlight of their phone. The house smells sweet, they notice. Hello, they say. There is a rustle. There is a hum. And then 7 figures rise from the roots. Their skin is pale and their eyes are a rolling green. The teenager tries to scream, tries to run. They make it to the door, but then they trip on a root. Their phone goes flying out into the yard. And so joins the 8th. They are still there, people say. Still growing. Still humming.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us tonight. Our next performer is Chi Chi.
My name is Chi Chi Chandu. I'm 16, go to Lee Summit West. This is my first year doing the whole making a story thing for this. And my story is called Movie Night. Her head hurt and it felt cold. Those were the only things Romy could think of as she woke up. Throwing her sheets off, she made her way to the living room and almost sat on the couch, but instead, she paused. Looking around the room in confusion, a thought entered her mind. Is this really my house? She glanced at the couch that was decorated with the old, worn-down blanket her mother bought. She looked at the carpet stain that she created when she was younger. It was definitely her house, but something felt off. She sighed. It was probably because of the coolness. Her air conditioner had been broken for a while. Romy sat down on the couch and turned on the TV. It was some old horror movie she didn't know the name of. Settling down, she wrapped a blanket around herself and smiled. A movie night wasn't on her schedule, but relaxing every now and then never hurt anyone. The main character in the movie had woken up in a small, cold space, a freezer, she eventually realized. Her breath was visible and it was hard to move. Getting up, she banged on the walls. Somebody, please help me. Romy startled as pain suddenly shot up her hands. The main character kept banging on the walls. Somebody, please, she yelled, her voice scratchy. Romy's throat felt cold and sore. The main character fell to the icy floor, tears rolling down her face. Is anyone out there? The tears were cold on her cheeks as Romy wiped them off. She let go of her blanket and stood up shakily. eyes wide and unseeing. She made her way to the door of the living room and tried to open it, except she couldn't grab the doorknob. Her hand just phased right through it. All too quickly, her wooden walls turned to metal, and the sharp edge of the locked door cut through the brittle skin of her palm. That's right, she reminded herself. There was no movie. There was no warm blanket, only her in this cold, dark place. She sat down dejectedly. She was so tired and cold. The silence was almost too loud. She felt her eyes close again as she slipped into her dream, her paradise. She looked up at the TV only to see that it was now static. Shoving herself away from the couch, she tried to leave the house. She got to the front door and opened it, only to see the TV and couch from the other side. Her heartbeat picked up. She didn't want this to be the end. She didn't want to die like this. She tried opening the doors to any room, but every time, unfailingly, she was led back to the living room. A sob escaped her throat when she tried to open another door. Instead of turning the doorknob, her blue fingers came off the snap. She collapsed onto the metal ground and tried to breathe again, but the cold air was choking her, and her heartbeat was the only thing she could hear. Sorry. She felt bile rise in her throat and tears filled in her eyes as she looked back to the movie. She was alone in the cold, dark freezer, ice glossed over, ice forming on her skin, all but dead. If her life were a movie, maybe she'd get saved in the end. If her life were a movie, maybe she'd be alive. If her life were a movie, maybe her mother'd come to retrieve her. Oh yeah, her mom. Romy let out a humorless laugh. If this were a movie, maybe her mom would have thrown her in here.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful story. And our next performer tonight is Kyler.
All right, we can all hear me, right? Perfect. So my story is called There Is Nothing to Be Scared of. There is nothing to be scared of in your own home. That's what my mom had told me before heading off for her week-long business trip, and it was my job to house sit until she came back, and even if I was a little paranoid to be alone in the house, she was right. There was nothing to be scared of in my own home. Funny how changing is to was completely changes the meaning of the sentence. I wish those statements had been true, being alone and being safe, but I've come to realize that I'm neither. I can feel eyes on me. I don't even need to turn around to confirm it, not that I'd be able to. It is too good at hiding, but I know he's there, watching, waiting. You guys probably think I'm crazy. You can see the hallway behind me and there's no one there. But that's because he's never staying in one place for too long. But he's there, watching and waiting. I can feel him on me. And I can feel the suffocating pulse of my heartbeat in my throat and my chest. It feels like it's seizing up. And I want to sob. I want to wail. But I'm still as a statue in comparison because I don't want to dare to make a move. He's right there. He's kneeling as he watches me, and that sound, the sound of chewing, the sound of grinding teeth and swallowing, the hot, labored breaths and the smell of rot and decay. I'm trapped, and there's no escape. I can't find it even in myself to cry out because the thought of death scares me so much, and it's hell, the waiting. And I want someone to find me. God, I want someone to find me, but they won't. Not for a few days, at least, but right now, I'm stuck here. And maybe this could have been avoided. It probably could have been, but I don't know what I could have done. And I cursed myself for not have realizing, but it's too late. I don't even know what I could have done in the first place. I always just thought it was rats. The scratching sound, the smells, the creaking above my bed, the basement door being left open, the sights, the smells, the odd stains, but it was never rats. It was never rats. It was him. And I don't understand why now. Why now did he do this? Maybe it's because he was hungry. Maybe it's because I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. But for weeks now, I felt his gaze down from that hallway. I'll be in class. I'll be in my classes, and I'll be talking to my teachers over the screen. I'll have to look over my shoulder because he's there. I know he's there, and he's watching me. God, why can't I have just stayed put? Why did I have to get curious? Why? Why did I have to stumble on his meats? Meats, that's not even the right word for them. They're corpses. And I can feel the bile start in the back of my throat, overwhelming nausea taking me, and I can't think of them like that. Meats, the corpses, the cats, the dogs, the neighbors' pets, and worst of all, a mother and a child, and rotting corpses that were shoved behind the boiler, and they were so close, and I never even noticed. And they were so close. But now it's too late, because he's here. And he must have caught me, because otherwise he's just playing a little game with me. I'm just prey for him to stalk. I'm just livestock waiting to be preyed upon by an angry wolf like sheep. All I am. Waiting for death. And I realize in stark horror that as tears fall down my cheeks, that the finger that reaches out to wipe off the tear is that of my mother's. My mother's severed arm that he's chewing on next to me, biting into, swallowing, the sound disgusting. And my mom, who never even got to leave for the airport in the first place. I just want this to be over. I never wanted to die. I didn't want to end up like this, but if this is my fate, then let it be over now. Don't make me wait longer.
Thank you all so much for sharing your stories with us tonight. You guys did amazing jobs, and we loved hearing them. So another snap for our performers tonight.
You guys tell some creepy stories.